This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's kind of overcast out, a little gray. It'll probably brighten up later, probably, maybe, hopefully. But either way, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunday. Another eventful week in the wonderful world of worlds. And I'm sure there will be more to come. Now, I could say that on any week, which makes this stream timeless. Anyway, who's joining me? Before I get into today's interesting topic, Noah Sencio, good morning. Mike R., good morning. Alan Thyler, good morning. Who else is here? Somnamnul Nation, good morning. Rotten Corpse, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Fostonia, good morning. Ryan R., good morning. No relation, as far as I know, to Mike R. Brittany Holland, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Shadowclaw, good morning. One Ton Hammer, good morning to you. Roasted Opinions, good morning. The Blakester, good morning. Who else is here? Simon Willikins, good morning. And Non-Vitae Rex, good morning to you. And for anybody else I missed, anybody lurking, anybody in the future, good morning to you. And, Spoonie the Rebel, good morning, as people start to filter in. I'll get to some more good mornings as time goes on. So this morning's, I don't know what's going on, feature is owning your whiteness. Oh boy, I can't wait to own my whiteness. Now, what does that mean? Well, my idealistic brain said, I hope this is parody. I hope this is satire. I hope this is, just own the fact that you're white. It'd be some kind of joke or something. But then I did glance at the description for this little podcast interview thing. And I saw something that made me all sorts of happy and cringy at the same time. Our speaker today, the featured guest on this podcast, has a TEDx talk. Although, funnily enough, it's spelled TEDx on the description of the video, TEDx. And it's a TEDx talk that came out in 2022 that I missed. Along the way, I missed. So, if I find our speaker today interesting and or compelling, it may be the case that sooner or later I will do a supplementary stream looking at his TEDx talk. Hopefully it won't be so duplicative that it's not worth anybody's time, but I guess we'll find out as we go. But yes, owning your whiteness. I assume we're all just going to have to take personal responsibility for our skin color. That's my assumption, but I don't know what the argument is, so we're going to find out together today. But before I get to that, TC, good morning. And did I miss anybody else? I don't think I did. So there you go. What's this through? Shadowclaw, good morning, good morning. We danced the whole night through. Good morning to you. Sure. I don't even know if that's the right tune, but I gave it a shot. Anyway, not much more preamble than that. If you'll take a quick look, though, at the top of the chat box for the links to GoFundMes for our friends Twisted Skipster, James Colley, Grisella, and Angry Illinoisian. Please take a look at those and donate if you are able. If you're not, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be appreciated. So let's find out from a professor. I believe his name is James Miller or Mueller. I'm not sure of his qualifications or his credentials, but I'm sure our host will tell us. Now, this entire talk clocks in at just over an hour. I'm going to go for about an hour and 30 minutes at most in real time, unless there is some compelling reason for me to continue further. And depending on the timing of it, I might do a part 2 if it seems worthy of it. So, all that being said, and also, Urcule Stefano, good morning. So, with that, let's find out, how are we going to own our whiteness?
Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Well, thank you for that welcome. And also, I'll be pausing quite frequently during the course of this broadcast because, as we know from the last TEDx, apparently, somehow, some way, I got through the entire TEDx without a problem, and then YouTube decided to interrupt my stream. I don't mean to be obnoxious, but YouTube makes me do this.
Today, my guest is Dr. Alan Mueller, and
Alan Mueller. I thought it was James. James, Alan. Oh, well.
today we talk about owning our whiteness. And my gosh, what a bold statement that sounds like it is.
What a bold statement that sounds like it is. Okay.
Me being a cisgender female, white female, able-bodied, Alan being a cisgender male, able-bodied. Talk about privilege. And so
yeah, talk about privilege. Okay, those are privileges, if you say so.
So it's about using that privilege to disrupt privilege.
Using that privilege to disrupt privilege. Well, what if I don't use that privilege? Wouldn't that be disrupting privilege by not actually exercising it?
Alan's whole mission is using his white privilege to create and develop empathy.
Ooh.
He has a TEDx talk called
Yes, he does.
Doing the Math. How do we measure privilege? His entire company, Adaptive Challenge Consulting, is about equity, diversity, inclusion, gender, all of these things.
How have I never heard of this before? In 7 years of looking at DEI stuff and such. Oh man, do I have a new project? I might have to look up and see if there's any other videos on this guy.
And let's just take a minute to put our privilege in check. Our social economic privilege, the color of our skin, our sexual orientation, and then
yeah, all of these things that say absolutely nothing about one's character. But yeah, it's all privilege. It is a privilege to be straight. It's a privilege to be white. My economic status, regardless, is somehow a privilege. In most people's cases, it's not a result of their own efforts and labor and hard work, or lack thereof, depending on the circumstances. Oh, okay.
And then also, are we opening our eyes to other perspective? Are we reading books by authors of different colors, of
is that the only litmus test I need for who to read books from?
different sexual orientations and different perspectives? Are we watching movies? Are we hanging out and gathering in places where there's diversity?
Are we assessing the quality of our circumstances and surroundings on the basis of the skin colors we're observing? Is this really the philosophy you want people operating on? I guess it is.
And so it really just lets us take a look at where we are and how can we use our privilege to make this world a better place. This is an awesome topic. Alan is a little bit of a comedian, and
oh, good. I love racist comedy.
So it's just fun, engaging. I really, really enjoy this conversation. I want to thank you so much for being here, and please take a moment to give us a like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, same advice I would give to my audience. Give me a like, share, and or a subscribe if you haven't already. You can be a scriber. Are you a subscriber? Anyway.
And let's just dive on in for today's episode.
Yay. Okay, I'm going to skip over the musical. I see from the YouTube interruption from the last stream, I have a sinking suspicion that maybe what got me in trouble was the musical beats at the end or something of the stream, because it's like I went through the entire show without any problems, and then right at the end, I got zapped. So I'm going to skip over our musical cue here. Yes, whoa, okay. So let me make sure I get the fullness of the introduction here. Make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so all right.
Oh, good morning, Alan. How are you? Actually, it's not morning there. How are you today?
I'm great. A little bit of a time difference, but I am very good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the Connected Community Podcast. I'm so happy to be chatting with you.
And I'm very happy the two of you are chatting, and here's my obligatory pausing.
I'm thrilled to be here. This is going to be a great conversation. Yeah.
I hope so.
So one of the things that you're passionate about is using your privilege, leveraging your privilege to help develop more empathy.
Using privilege to develop empathy. Now, as I've said several times in the past, empathy in the context used regarding social justice and or diversity, its synonym is often agree with me or you're a bad person. That's what empathy translates to in my experience when it comes to these kind of conversations and contexts. It's that I come into the room, right, as the righteous, enlightened individual, diversity expert, so on and so forth. And I'm here to teach or encourage empathy. And by empathy, I mean if I say something and you disagree with me, you obviously lack empathy for my argument. But I cloak it in this word and this term, empathy, which is one of the sort of foundationary blocks of human compassion and association, to make it sound like what I have to say has far more value morally than it actually does. That's a sort of Trojan horse. That's the sort of wedge into someone's psyche that using the word empathy to enshroud your ideas does. That's my interpretation of using the word.
And so I'd love to know a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah. And so for your viewers listening that don't see me, I'm a white guy.
Oh my God. And that means what?
And for the viewers who do see me, do not adjust your screen. I am white.
Uh-huh. And
so, as a white man who's also cisgender, and if your audience is unfamiliar with that term, it means that when I was born, the doctor was like, "It's a boy," and they happened to guess right in my case.
It wasn't a guess. You are a male. They didn't flip a coin or something.
So good for them. But that's not the case for everybody.
That's not the case for everybody. Yes. Well, if the doctor brings the baby out and makes an assessment of the baby's gender, and in some way, shape, or form, chromosomally, genetically, or otherwise, it is later determined that there's some confusion about that, all that means is that we are dealing with a birth defect. That doesn't change the fact that there's two genders and you're either one or the other. Unless you want to name for me the third biological gender.
I've lived in the U.S. my entire life. I'm the child of an immigrant, but I've lived here my whole life. And
okay, so you're an American.
Everything in the U.S. is very much built around my comfort and my convenience.
Well, yes, we live in a capitalist society that deals with services for people to make life easier that you pay for. But you pay for them. But do tell.
And, even though I think that I'm appreciative of the progress we are making.
Oh, really? Would you like to detail this progress?
There's still so many unfulfilled promises. And so one of the questions is, how do I be white and be the best white person I can? How do
I don't know. How can you be the best white person you can be? Tell me more about elevating yourself on the basis of your skin color in a moral context.
I take things that are privileges I didn't earn and put them on the line for those who don't have that unearned privilege. How can I sort of use privilege to disrupt privilege, if that makes sense?
Ah, yes. Okay. So you are a frontline warrior. I can tell. I can tell by your grandpa hat that you are a stalwart frontline warrior in the fight to enhance other people's lives with your obvious privilege. Privilege that I have to assume you possess based on your skin color. And your assumed or projected, sexuality or whatever else. I know something about your character and the quality of your life simply by looking at you. Because of your race, primarily. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a journey. There's no easy answer. I don't know that I could have a book about how to do this.
Why not? I mean, you've lived it. Just tell your story.
It's everyday little decisions. It's
like,
am I reading books by Black and Latine authors? Am I
Black and Latine authors. You mean Latino? What?
Listening to queer and trans voices when it's, am I just, listening to differently abled people and
Wait. Okay. How does your reading a book or your listening to quote unquote voices change anything? Are you just talking about the commerce aspect of it? Like, I specifically went to the bookstore and I bought a book by an author of a particular skin color, and therefore now I have made the moral good choice as a white person. It doesn't matter whether the author's any good. It doesn't matter whatever the speaker, queer or otherwise, has anything useful to say, just as long as I become a patron of someone on the basis of their, non-determinative elements. That makes me a good white person.
in ways that can honor them? And am I absorbing that knowledge and that perspective and trying to develop better understandings?
Mm-hmm.
Understandings of what? So if a black person or a queer person writes or says something that tells you something about black and or queer people in general, or does that tell you about that individual's perspective? Or then do you assume to know the quality of thought or the lifestyle or the lived experience of someone who happens to share those characteristics based on one or two persons' interpretations of life because of what they look like or how they conduct their lives? Okay.
And each time you try, I'm never going to understand it, but that doesn't mean I
Understand
shouldn't
what?
keep trying. And
Try to do what? I hope he gives us an example.
the ability and the willingness to keep trying, even though I know always fail, is part of sort of what they call the growth mindset, right? It's
I'll keep trying forever, even though I know I'm going to fail. Could you be any more pathetic? Why do you know you're going to fail? Why do you have this fatalism in you? Because you're white? Because being white is an inherent and unfixable flaw in your character and your existence? I got a feeling.
It's not everything is about succeeding at the goal. I am never going to understand, for example, the life of a trans black woman.
You're right. You probably won't. Could you understand the life of an individual person?
Right.
I'm never going to really understand that life, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't spend mental energy reading work by people in that community. And
why? It's got nothing to do with you. I mean, I'm never going to understand what it must be like to be a Samoan undertaker. I just picked, two random things in my mind. A Samoan undertaker. I'm never going to understand that. But why should I spend any time trying to? What does that mean? All I'm going to be able to do is probably read one or two persons' perspectives on it. And what does that tell me? Why do I need to? Why do you need to? I guess I don't get that.
And watching media that they've developed and just listening,
Yeah.
To what end? And I'm not trying to be heartless here. I'm not saying that there's no purpose in, learning something from someone else or trying to understand something of someone's life or whatever else. But specifically, he's not talking about individuals. He's talking about characteristics. To what end is focusing on or patronizing people, and I mean that in the sort of positive sense of, buying their stuff or listening to their things, on those elements? What does that do for you? Morally, spiritually, commercially, what?
What initially sparked this interest and passion for you? Was there something that happened? Did a light bulb go on one day for you?
I don't know. There were a series of events. I mentioned I'm the child of an immigrant, and
which means nothing in particular.
And my father is from Germany, and lost a lot of family in World War II. And one thing I remember as a youth was he sort of tried to shield me from a lot of U.S. movies, because in the 70s and 80s, when I was growing up, U.S. films, Germans were always the villains.
In the 70s and the 80s, Germans were always the villains. I don't know that is true, but okay. And I mean, Germans, or a specific ideology associated with Germans when that does happen.
Of course, Germany, especially leading into the 70s, had a horrendous history on human rights.
But by the way, there's all these little cuts in his, I don't know if that was the broadcast of his webcam, but that's not me, and it's not my broadcast. That's happening in the raw video.
But also, my dad remembered a Germany that was about, cuisine and culture and music and hospitality and things that weren't the horrible parts, and said, I want you to know a Germany before you know about all the ugliness, or as you learn about the ugliness, I want you to learn about the other parts too. And he was convinced that U.S. media was just showing the ugliness. And I get it.
What does that have to do with white privilege?
But that little itty bitty inkling made me think about media differently. And then when I went to college and was exposed to ideas about, well, how is the Black community portrayed in movies and TV?
Yeah.
What words are used? What words are used on the evening news to describe a Black person who committed a crime that are different from the words that are used to describe a white person who committed a crime?
Yeah.
And so you felt a kind of, brotherhood with Black people because of how German people were categorized in the media?
And so I think that was part of it. And then another part of it was I was in a English class my first year of college. And I wish I could say that this was a noble thing, but there was a young woman in my class who I may have had a little bit of a crush on. Who invited me to come watch her choir sing at this tree lighting event. It was near the holidays, and it was the Black Student Association Gospel Choir. And they stood in the cold in December as the university did this tree lighting, and they sang a cappella, and it was amazing. It was.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on this story.
Amazing. And I approached the director and I said, could I be a part of this? And he goes, sure, yeah, sign up. It's a class. You can join in the spring.
Yeah. And
I did, and I became kind of the white member of a 90-member Black Student Association gospel choir.
Wow.
And that experience, and one other thing I'll mention, my university, at the time we had 2.5% of our population were students of color, about 100. So we had 10,000 students. 190 of them were Black or African American. And I was in choir with 95 of those students.
So
I sort of accidentally became the white guy that a lot of the Black folks in the community knew.
And that says what? Maybe I'm just too idealistic. What does any of this have to do with anything?
Yeah.
And how was that received by that a cappella group?
So, I mean, it was interesting because I don't know if my presence was disruptive. Again, I was invited in.
Okay.
But I was invited in by a person or two. That doesn't mean necessarily that I had an invitation from the whole community.
Do you need an invitation from the whole community to join in with an activity? Does it have to be a unanimous vote? And if it isn't, then what? So even though you didn't know if you were fully accepted, you stayed anyway, and okay.
So it was a little bit of a risk on my part. And
what was it? What was at risk? What was at risk?
It was a little bit of a risk on those who invited me.
Why?
And I had to learn quickly the difference between appropriation and intercultural exchange. There's a big difference between cultural appropriation and intercultural exchange.
Oh, there is? Oh, okay. What is the difference? What is the difference between cultural appropriation and intercultural exchange? Like, if I'm not Romanian, so if I write a story about vampires, is that cultural appropriation or intercultural exchange?
And the difference is who has the power and who's doing the inviting.
Who has the power and who's doing the inviting? Okay, well, you asked if you could join. The person in charge said, sure, because, I mean, first and foremost, if the school denied you access to that activity on the basis of your race, your gender, whatever, they'd be violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the first place. But anyway, yes, so you asked, they said yes, you went in, and what was culturally exchanged about the fact that you were the only white guy on the choir? How does race determine culture?
Those are the two big things.
Mm-hmm.
And in time, we found that we had so much in common when it came to our love of this music, our various faith traditions that came together because it was a gospel choir.
Right.
And then, you go on the road and you're on a tour bus and you're traveling 6 hours with folks. You start bonding and forming relationships. And
it's almost like race is irrelevant, isn't it?
Those relationships help stretch your mind and help stretch you, and I had and at the time.
Were they relationships based on individuals or based on skin colors? Just tell me that one.
Sometimes I would pat myself on the back. Like I would be like, oh, I'm a white guy who twice a week is in a classroom with only black people. So I get it. I get what it's like to be a minority.
Yeah, that is kind of a stupid way of thinking.
No, I did not.
Right.
But every once in a while I would pat myself on the back for thinking that I was doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And you were doing nothing. Your race is irrelevant. You either participated and you contributed to the activity or you didn't, as a person, as an individual, right?
And I learned from that and grew from that.
Did you? Did you, though? Because if I'm not mistaken, you started out this little conversation talking about how to be the best white person I can be. And is that not at least reaching a little bit awkwardly behind yourself to pat yourself on the back every day, even though obviously you will always be a failure, you will always screw up everything, and all you can do is try? Did you really learn anything? I don't know.
Because it doesn't matter if I'm in a room. It doesn't matter if I work at a historically black college, if I'm in a room of all Latino people or all black people. The power structure.
Don't you mean Latine people? Pardon me. I mean, you're setting the agenda vocabulary here. Latine, right?
U.S. is still so white, right? Congress, Fortune 500 CEOs, university presidents. Like it's the power structure is still so white that.
And what would you suggest be done to solve for that problem?
I don't want to trick myself into thinking that I really kind of get it because I don't. Yeah.
Okay, self-pity on parade.
How did you notice the power struggle and that power playing in that a cappella group?
I mean, so again, I was invited by a member to sort of come check them out.
Yeah, come check them out. I mean, you weren't invited to join, were you? I mean, maybe I misunderstood the story. A girl in your class said, "Hey, you should come watch us perform." That's the gist of the story that I got. And then after you went there, you asked if you could join. So it wasn't like you were automatically invited to join the group, or did I misread that anecdote?
And then I spoke to the director, and the director invited me to come on in and sing.
No. You asked if you could. No. Wait. Okay. The chain of events here, and I don't know how important this is or not. I just want to make sure I get this right. A girl in your class said, hey, you should come check out our choir. You went to check out your choir. Then you asked the director if you could join, and he said, sure. But of course, he couldn't tell you no, pretty much, unless they had some kind of audition process or something, because it's a school choir. It's a class at the college or a group at the college. And so by law, they are obligated to allow you access. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to be telling us.
Mm-hmm. And so, there was, I think my perception is there was a little bit of, because that director had invited me, there was a little bit of wait and see.
Yeah.
On behalf of that community.
Well, did they know you could sing or not first? I feel like I'm missing some relevant details to whatever the story is.
And then two, one of the questions is, can he sing? Is
yes.
he going to mess things up?
Right.
Like in other words,
right.
There were other reasons that the group was there. But I also recognize now.
You mean merit? Are you talking about merit? Yeah. Is that even a consideration in this story?
That at that university, all Black spaces were very rare. And it's interesting because knowing what I know now, I might not have joined the choir.
Knowing what you know now, you might not have joined. So wait. You, as an individual, had an interest in, and at least some shared capacity for, gospel singing, and you joined a group of gospel singers, and you ended up making new friends, relationships, new experiences, going around singing and so forth. Back then. But knowing what you know now, you would have avoided taking that risk to join in with a group and make friends. Why?
Might have chosen not to, or
why?
Found another way to support the choir that was.
And would that have been a better option? So you would rather have deprived yourself of the experiences, relationships, and friendships that were made in taking part in an activity that you had a shared passion for with those same people because you felt or you have learned to feel guilty over your skin color. Can we think of a better definition for self-defeatism than that?
Joining it, because maybe there was a sacredness to, and I think there were 2 white women in the choir.
So you weren't the only white person in the choir. You think there were 2 white women in the choir. If this was such an important element of your membership, you're not sure?
So there were a few other white people, but I was the first white guy.
Oh. Wow, this whole choir story is becoming more interesting as we go on. Okay, so you weren't the first white person in the choir. Just the first white guy.
And so, knowing what I know now, I don't know if it was more disruptive. I don't know.
You don't. Okay. So the interviewer asks him for an example of a light bulb moment or whatever else. And we enter into this long story about being the first white person on the choir, except he's not the first white person on the choir. He's the first white guy on the choir. And made a bunch of new friends, had a bunch of new experiences, learned a bunch of things about people, made a bunch of connections. But now that he's older and wiser, he might not have joined because he didn't want to disrupt anybody because of his skin color into a sacred space for people of color. And so his advice to anybody today in the same situation would be, don't do it. If that is the information he's trying to pass on to the next generation is, hey, do you have a shared interest with a bunch of people that don't look like you? Stay away. Self-segregate or do something on the sidelines to support it, but don't get involved. Boy, howdy. Doesn't that sound like, engendering empathy amongst people?
Right.
But
So
of course, knowing
yeah.
what I know now wouldn't have happened without that experience too. So it's a conundrum. Sorry, I cut you off, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not a conundrum. It's not a conundrum. You are so you have so much cognitive dissonance going around in your brain about what is appropriate in the realm of human interaction on the basis of skin color that you cannot even look back at an overall positive experience that you had growing up with new relationships and friends made without now putting it through the self-imposed guilt trip of your skin color to effectively advise anyone else coming to that same situation to stay away, to not do it, to not get involved in something on the basis of a shared passion, but instead first look at, am I going to fit in? Am I bothering the people who don't look like me? Okay, we're only 10 minutes into this thing, and I apologize for all the pausing, but unfortunately YouTube causes me to do this. But this is an interesting mentality on display.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because
Does
you want
it?
to honor the sanctity of that space that they have, that they don't.
The sanctity of the skin color is sacred? Is that what this is? Skin color is sacred? Are you guys listening to yourselves? There were already, okay, there were already white ladies on the choir. How sacred was it? What are you?
They don't really get to have spaces that are all inclusive.
They don't really get to have spaces that are all inclusive. What? No. If you're saying that a space is sacred because it has to be apportioned to specific skin colors, you're not talking about inclusive. You're not talking about all inclusive. You're talking about segregation. Are you?
Yeah.
And so it changes the dynamic a little bit.
Does it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about your work and what
Okay.
you're doing with your work, because you're, building emotional intelligence in other people's lives. And
is he? Emotional intelligence. Okay, do tell.
educating and working with gender and equity and diversity and inclusion and
and promoting self-segregation from others on the basis of a not shared skin color. Yeah, okay.
honoring all the different just navigating just a bunch of different paths for people, and so and opening people's eyes to that. So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is let's find out where the rubber meets the road on this one.
Yeah. Well, so my company, we're a consulting group, and so we work with city governments and county governments and colleges and universities.
And isn't that a frightening thought, given the preamble to all of this?
K-12 systems and companies, corporations, all kinds of groups.
Yeah, companies, corporate. Yeah, okay.
On emotional intelligence, and it's interesting. If you took a poll 20 years ago of everybody across the country, what do you want in leaders?
What do I want in leaders? Knowledge, initiative, and principles. I mean, I realize that's kind of abstract, but the first things that come to my mind, without thinking too hard about it, stream of consciousness. Yeah.
There's a certain list of qualities they want. And now, very, very suddenly and very, very abruptly in the last 10 years, empathy and intercultural competence have jumped onto the top of that list.
Jumped onto the top of that list or been rammed into the academy by a bunch of activist wahoos?
Yeah.
And part of this is thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, thanks, Black Lives Matter movement.
Part of this is thanks to the Arab Spring international.
The Arab Spring. The Arab Spring promoted empathy and intercultural competence? What?
Actually, part of this is thanks to other movements that are about getting folks who've been historically and currently marginalized in front of the microphone.
So why are you here? I mean, seriously, if you actually believe in everything that you're saying, why are you the guy to be the face, literally, of an organization that promotes these things? If your entire life has been based around privilege and unearned benefits and so on and so forth, can I even take your credentials seriously? Did you actually earn your whatever accredits our speaker to being a doctor? I believe he was listed off as a doctor. I don't know what he has a doctorate in, but whatever it is his diploma legitimate? If it was unearned, if he was given the easy path through, did he actually, fill out and achieve all the things necessary to reach the title of doctor? Or is he just a recipient of white privilege? I have to wonder. And if I have to wonder, certainly he has to wonder, because he's the guy saying that that's all true. So that's always been the standing contradiction to me of anybody in a position of authority or who would comport themselves as an expert in anything, but who also believes in and advocates for the idea of white privilege when they themselves are white. That's always going to make my brain just a little bit.
For our group, though, one of the things that we do that's a little different is sometimes people will ask us, can you come to an EDI workshop? And so
an EDI workshop, is that just equity, diversity, and inclusion, just switched up the letters? I'm noticing people are starting to de-center, let's say, the word diversity lately. Trying to. It's really hard to do, but they're trying.
So, depending on who they are, if it's a room full of my fellow white people, I'll just gleefully go in there and run it for them.
What? Hold on. I need to back up. Let's listen to that again, shall we?
Sometimes people will ask us, can you come to an EDI workshop? And so, depending on who they are, if it's a room full of my fellow white people, I'll just gleefully go in there and run it for them.
Right.
And if it was not a room full of white people, you'd be what? Glum and sullen about it?
If it's a more diverse group, I pull in a few of my affiliates who might be Black women or a Black man or have other intersecting identities so that we have authenticity and we have credibility in the room together.
So wait a second. If the room is full of white people, you're fine just gleefully running in all by yourself. But if the room is not full of white people, you have to bring in your some of my best friends are not white posse to what? Insulate yourself from. Are you are you what? Listen to yourself. Listen to what you are saying and you are implying about people. What you believe to be true. A room full of white people are going to take you seriously just because you're white. But if the room is not full of white people, if it's a diverse audience, well, then you have to bring in credibility on the basis of the skin colors of others. Because skin color equals credibility to other people of similar skin colors. This is how you believe other people's brains work. That everybody is inherently racist. That a Black man could not listen to an Asian speaker and see anything credible about that person or have doubts about that person's credibility on the basis of their opposing skin colors. And that if you reverse the same thing, have an Asian audience member and a Black speaker, the same thing's going to happen. That's how you think everyone operates. Okay.
And so, but one of the things that's interesting is sometimes we're asked to do that, but sometimes we're just asked to do leadership training or communication training, and we bring in conversations about identity through that because
because you have to bring in identity politics into everything, even into places it doesn't belong, because you're a zealot?
It shouldn't always be a separate unit.
It shouldn't. It always has to be integrated in. Okay.
That's one of the worst things we do, is decide that, oh, we're going to do a 5-day workshop, and day 3 we're going to talk about diversity, and then we're just going to move on. And
Right.
we've checked the box that we've talked about diversity. Well, or what if, when you're talking about communication, when you're talking about professionalism, you can deconstruct it a little bit and say, hey, so who's been in charge of what counts as professional?
So when talking about a basic skill set or philosophy on something, let's also put in some kind of racial and or sexist guilt trip into people and be all judgy and preachy at the same time. Yeah, let's do that. Let's not talk about leadership skills minus any attributes that are irrelevant to simply leadership skills, and instead take a moment to do a commentary on my beliefs about the social constructs of things. Right? I'm here to teach you all about leadership, but don't be too excited about being a leader if you're white and male. Okay? Okay, kids? If you're white and male, I mean, I'll tell you what it takes to be a good leader, but just don't try too hard. And if it comes down to a point where it's between you and somebody else, you really need to assess how much you should try for that position based on the skin color of your competition. Because you really don't want to take away an opportunity from someone else who obviously needs a leg up because of what they look like versus what you look like. So just keep that in mind, guys. Keep that in mind. Good leadership means capitulating to others on what they look like. Just saying.
Spoiler alert, it's been white men.
Oh my God! Even in Africa? Even in China? Really? Always and forever?
Yeah.
Right? And then, can we deconstruct that? Can we interrogate that? Can we kind of poke some holes in it and go, well, why are these professional standards this way? Communication styles, right? That certain people are, I think I mentioned to you, I do a lot of work with extroverts and introverts.
You do? Okay. And so you do a lot of work with people. Extroverts and introverts? Well, you've covered all the bases, so people.
And I break them into extroverts and introverts. And I say to the extroverts,
yes,
look across the room.
Yeah.
If you know anybody across the room on the introvert side who's a woman, I want you to pay attention to my question. My question is, who's ever heard of resting Mitch face?
Wait. Sorry. I need a moment. To process that. Let's back up a little bit. If you've ever been in a room and you see an introverted, I'm not quite sure how you tell a woman is introverted necessarily. I guess it depends on the circumstances. But if I see an introverted woman, I do what now?
This way. Communication styles, right? That certain people are, I think I mentioned to you, I do a lot of work with extroverts and introverts. And I break them into extroverts and introverts. And I say to the extroverts.
You say to the extroverts. Okay, so the social butterflies, right?
Look across the room.
Look across the room.
If you know anybody across the room on the introvert side who's a woman.
If you know anyone on the other side of the room who's an introverted woman.
I want you to pay attention to my question. My question is, who's ever heard of resting Mitch face?
Okay, resting bitch face. Yes, I have heard the term. Yes. In fact, I might be afflicted with a similar condition because I don't smile well, in the sense that when I think I'm smiling, it doesn't look like I'm smiling if someone takes a photo or something. It's a very weird thing where, like, I can't count how many pictures I've had with family and everything where it's like, smile, and I think I'm smiling. I don't smile with my teeth. My mouth isn't shaped. It looks like I'm grimacing if I try to smile with my teeth. It doesn't look like I'm smiling. It looks like I'm in pain or something. So I much more naturally smile with just my lips. But my sensation of the degree to which I'm smiling with my lips versus how it actually projects in the real world, there's quite the differential there. So a lot of people think I'm very serious in times where I'm not necessarily serious, or I'm not feeling like super serious or stoic, but I just look that way. That's just, I've learned over the years, I think, better to emote myself in different situations. So I know what that's like. All right. And you know what? I'm also, and have been most of the time, an introvert. I'm just not a woman. So I'm not quite sure what the female part of it is, but let's assume for a second. Okay. Introvert, resting, not happy face. That's okay. We'll keep that in mind. But before I get there, thank you so much, Shadowclaw, for the #1 Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat Fox.
Wow-wee! Wow! Wow!
That's a drunken uncle, Dog Cat Fox. Thank you so much, Shadowclaw. Appreciate it. Nice to see a little Dog Cat Fox. And also, apparently, this is Shadowclaw's 5th super chat on a live stream. Congratulations. You're 5 chats old now. There you go. All right, resting bitch face.
Now notice I'm saying bitch face with an M.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Okay, well, now the walls of reality have shattered around me. Resting Mitch face.
As though there's some trope that introverted men deal with.
Wait, what? What? Hold on. As though there's some trope that introverted men deal with? Wait, so I'm an extrovert. I'm looking across the room at an introverted female. What?
Pay attention to my question. My question is, who's ever heard of resting Mitch face? Now notice I'm saying Mitch face with an M.
Yeah.
As though there's some trope that introverted men deal with, which introverted men don't. There's nobody's policing introverted men's level of talkativeness. That's not happening.
Are you out of your... So, I, growing up, a shy introvert, was never criticized or pointed out to for my lack of involvement or my nervousness or my shyness. Really? Wow. You know what? Whatever world you have lived in, boy, I wish I grew up in. I wish I had grown up in a world where not being reflexively social or being a little longer to warm up to people or make connections wasn't something that I could be criticized for or belittled for or bullied for or anything else. Boy, howdy. What are you talking about?
But I'm doing this juxtapositionally to remind them that extroversion and introversion is a thing, but on top of that is gender. On top of that is race.
Oh, intersectionality. Yes, taking a whole bunch of molehills and piling them up and calling them a volcano. On top of this, on top of that. Okay, so what is the extrovert supposed to do in the situation where they see an introverted woman across the way? I thought we were going to get into some kind of advice column here.
And I'm like, look across the room at women of color on the other side. Are you, particularly if they're introverts, are you ascribing them are you ascribing that they have an attitude? Like, what do you think of when you think about that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What should I think of a person of color simply on the basis of them being a person of color? What should I think about a white person on the basis of them being a white person? What are you ascribing someone on the basis of what you observe? Well, there's things like attitude, there's things like behavior, and then there's things that have nothing to do with either one of them, like skin color, like gender, like factors of one's makeup that are non-determinative of someone's character. So if I observe a person behaving in a particular way, I might indeed make an assessment of that person's behavior and or their character in the absence of any direct communication, but at least I'm observing something of their own expression and not an expression of their genetics, which say nothing about them as an individual. So you're going to critique someone making a snap reflexive assessment of someone's behavior as a problem. But their skin color, their gender, oh, well, those are perfectly acceptable to start assessing the quality of their life or how much pity I should take on them. I'll ask again. Are you even listening to yourself?
And can we disrupt that some? And so even though the group hiring me may just want to talk about the Myers-Briggs and personality type, which is great and it's fun and it's awesome.
You know, I've heard of Myers-Briggs, and I think I've taken some online tests here and there. Otherwise, I've never understood what purpose that has or what that's supposed to tell anybody anything about. I mean, half the time it looks like it's just a glorified horoscope kind of thing, but I could be wrong.
We can't do those things in a vacuum. We can't do those things in a vacuum because race is here, gender is here.
Race is here, gender is here. You're right. Yeah, those things exist. How do you want me to assess people on the basis of them? I kind of already know the answer, but still.
Gender identity is here. Sexuality is here. Ableism is here. All.
Wow, what revelations.
The things are here.
Yeah.
And they're here with us wherever we go.
And they say what about an individual's character? They say what about an individual's experience?
And so the other thing is I speak from my experience.
Oh, you do. Oh, but you're perfectly happy to make us. Okay. I speak from my experience, your individual experience, but you're teaching people to think first about assuming someone else's experience, not on them, but on what they look like.
It's not my job to talk about the Black community in any way that's ascriptive or as though I'm any kind of expert, because I will never be, or the Latino community, the differently abled community. No. I can tell you about my experience as a white man.
You can tell your experiences as Alan Miller or Mueller, whatever it was. That's it. You, the individual. You have no idea what another white man's experience is, unless, again, you're ascribing, as you say you're not, an assumption of value, character, experience, and quality onto someone on the basis of their skin color and or their gender, which is what you're doing. I can't speak for this community or that. No, but you can tell everybody else to make assessments of them and that they need help where you do not because of opposing skin colors. Good, great. I can't get through a minute of listening to this guy without him just going completely contradictory on everything he said previous. It's so... I always wonder, I don't actually want to know, but I always am curious abstractly. How does someone with these opposing and gobbledygook thoughts in their head move through the world on a daily basis? How do they operate with all of this going on? If they actually believe it, if it's not just rhetoric, if it's not just pillow talk for the sake of selling a book or getting people to give money to your organization or something. Is this any way to live?
I can tell you about what I do and don't have to do. And I can just start there, you know?
Yeah.
So you really know nothing about anything except what you have to say about you. And so what is the purpose of your organization again? Or your trainings or your consulting?
And so if we're wanting to increase our emotional intelligence, then where would be a good place to start?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's such a broad topic. So maybe we should break that down a little bit and say, like, what is emotional intelligence?
There you go. Yeah, let's define our terms first. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, some of the key elements of emotional intelligence are listening, like deep listening. I'm married to a counselor. And if anybody has a friend who's a counselor or has been to therapy, which I highly recommend, you may have had a counselor say to you things like, you say something and they say, if I hear you, I think you're saying this. It's called.
Yeah, that I kind of do that all the time, honestly. I listen quite intently to speakers and TEDx talkers and everything else, and I try to take what they've said. And if you go back through my videos, oftentimes I'll take what someone said, restate it to myself in a way, try to process it so I can try to understand. Even if I don't accept the premise or the point or the argument or anything else, I do my best to try to understand. Unless it's complete contradictory nonsense, and then I try to at least understand the nonsense. But yes,
Or say to you things like, you say something and they say, if I hear you, I think you're saying this. It's
Right.
called rephrasing in counseling.
Yes, I rephrase quite often. It's true. You might have noticed it already in this broadcast.
Even if you're not a counselor, you can do that. If you're
I know.
listening to someone, you can
Yeah.
rephrase and be like, so if I get you, you're
Yeah.
kind of saying this. Right?
Yes, yes.
So listening is part of it. Empathy is another part.
Yes. All right. So I got the listening thing. I was trying to assess now, do I have emotional intelligence? Okay. So first is deep listening, rephrasing, trying to understand, etc. Okay. I do that. All right. Do I have empathy? Let's find out.
Empathy is another part.
Yes.
You know, every one of us has a difficult life. You know, one of my colleagues, Dr. Kelly Dixon, says all of us have experienced trauma in some way.
Sure. Every one of us has experienced trauma. It does differ person to person and extreme to extreme. You know, my worst day might be a cakewalk to someone else, but it's still my worst day in general terms.
Yeah.
And so when you know that, honor that by extending empathy and grace first, right? And so if some
extending empathy and grace first, even though I'm supposed to assume that there is a quality of life obvious differential between people on the basis of their skin color and or their gender. Which, you know, it's the same kind of problem with the whole DEI hiring process. Even if your entire hiring process is completely, boilerplate, law-abiding, baseboard, do you have the merits or education necessary for this job, etc. At whatever point in your pipeline you are considering the race and or the gender and or the orientation of the candidate, it doesn't matter whether that's at the front of the process, the middle, or the end. That's the point at which you have erred. E-R-R-E-D. You have erred in your thinking in assessing someone for an opportunity or otherwise. All right. Both, I think, ethically and also legally. All right. So at whatever point in your empathetic process you are assessing someone's experience or trying to evaluate what you know about someone's life and lifestyle on the basis of their skin color, their gender, or their orientation, that is where you have erred in the empathy process. And so I'm dying to know how he's going to escape that obvious fact.
Someone's late to a meeting rather than why are you late? Like, how about, are you okay?
Well, isn't why? So I have to assume that person is now traumatized. Are you okay? Someone's late. Are you okay?
Is everything okay?
Well, I don't know. Does the person look like they've been hurried? Are they crying? Do they look stressed out? Maybe I need to use my empathy first to figure out, is the situation we're dealing with one of crisis or one of someone just coming in late?
And so starting with those kinds of things, starting with deep listening and starting with empathy are two key elements. Another one, and I'm doing a free webinar coming up at the end of February.
Oh boy, can I attend?
On emotional intelligence through talking type.
Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord, talking type. All right, well, you know, I have been both the victim of and the purveyor of problems in communicating through text because oftentimes, there's no inflection in text, especially short messages. So sarcasm or the meaning between things can sometimes be lost. So yeah, that's why I try to employ my English major skills as much as possible to give a little extra flourish to my words to make sure that I'm understood, or at least if I'm making a joke, it's obvious. But sometimes you can't. But anyway,
And so the Myers-Briggs is a great way to
is
talk
it?
about type and to talk about and build emotional intelligence, right?
Uh,
Even just if I say, hey, introverts and extroverts, y'all are wired a little differently.
oh, you're not talking about type as in keyboard. You're talking about type. Maybe I misunderstood. My brain is thinking typing, but you're talking about type. Okay. Again, Myers-Briggs assessments and things, you might as well be saying Gemini and Taurus as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah.
And y'all need to give each other some grace. For example, the first 3 years of my marriage, I constantly asked my wife, I'm an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly ask my wife, are you okay? Are you
Yeah.
mad? Is something
Yeah.
wrong? Are you okay?
sounds like you're paranoid.
Uh-huh.
Why was I was projecting extroversion onto her.
Okay. So in that instance, you were making a mistake?
For
Yeah.
her, silence is normal. And so
And so you've learned from this, if someone comes in late, to query them about their emotional state. So our speaker can't go 2 minutes without radically contradicting himself in his own life lessons. Some people just are quiet. Some people just are stoic. And so if someone comes in late, are you okay? Is everything all right? Maybe you need to check in on that person's condition. Oh, but when it comes to my wife, I learned, are you okay? Are you all right? Asking every 3 seconds to someone who just isn't, bombastic is now a problem. Which is it?
once I started understanding type better, that builds emotional intelligence. I
Does it?
realized that if an introvert's not talking as much as me, it doesn't mean something's wrong.
Yeah.
Now, if I have a friend who's an extrovert who gets quiet, that probably is a signal that something might be up, right?
Oh, being familiar with somebody to the point where you can recognize, shifts in behavioral patterns and things rather than making assumptions about people that you don't know, but instead just know that they need an extra help because she's an introvert on the other side of the room who's female. How does this guy operate? Seriously. Fostonia, holy cats. Thank you so much. Great job finding these gems, Scribe. A bedrock question that keeps coming up. How would MLK react to these people today? These people seem more likely to support MLK in the 60s, but now focus on race, sex, etc. Ironic. It is, I guess the best term I can use is disheartening. It is disheartening to look at the simple principle that Martin Luther King Jr. is known for, and putting it up against modern day academics, activists, experts, consultants, and so on, and just feeling a little ill inside every time that the message has died. The simple message doesn't seem to get across. And just for clarification, I've said this in a previous video where I compared, there was an NBC or something video where they compared whether or not Martin Luther King Jr. and Black Lives Matter would get along. They tried and they strained and they stretched so hard to try to say that MLK and BLM were on the same page somehow, that it practically broke the sound barrier. But they did their best. But I said it then. And just for clarification's sake, I have absolutely no idea of the totality of the character of Martin Luther King Jr. There's a lot of things out there about his biography, about his behaviors, about how he operated in his personal life and so on. But here's the thing. I don't care about Martin Luther King Jr., the man, so much, his image, his morality, whatever else. But I can take the principle that he espoused as something worth repeating and worth holding on to because it is the right way to operate. To assess someone on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Very simple, but seemingly impossible for all these modern day activists to accept. They have to assess people on what they look like. They have to take pity on people for who they are. Or pardon me, not for who they are, for what they are. And then they have to, conversely, vilify others, even themselves, on the basis of what they are. And our speaker has gone back and forth and sideways on this, as I have attempted to point out, because you just can't hold those two things in your mind at the same time, right? You can't say, I'm against racism, and then assess people on their race. You can't. It just does not work. And somehow they're trying over and over again to circle that square, and they can't do it because you can't. It's such a simple philosophy, and yet it seems to completely abandon in the minds of these people. And I said these people. And what do I mean by these people? I mean the people who advocate for this way of thinking, which, by the way, knows no boundaries when it comes to skin color or gender or whatever else, right? Because it's an idea, it's a philosophy, it's an ideology. And just listening to them try to explain themselves, it is so obvious that they are living in an absolute schizophrenic state of philosophy. How a good job finding these gems. I tell you, they are all over the place. It is not that hard to find. And I'm so glad. It seems a little bit late to me. It should have happened a lot earlier, but I'm so glad that finally, specifically DEI in particular, is becoming a hot button topic of criticism in even mainstream media circles. I've said this before. I feel like I've been shouting into the wind for 7 years, but at least finally, and I realize I'm not like the only one out there. I'm not the only stalwart soldier on the line like our speaker is when fighting against privilege with his privilege. But I'm glad it's finally being given some notice. But anyway, we got about 15 minutes left to my usual run time, so we'll give this a bit more. Again, apologies if I'm pausing too much. I am a little bit paranoid because of YouTube and how they treated me with my last TEDx talk, but I'll try to let them go on. I need to know. I need YouTube to tell me, what is the time limit, right? How long can I play a segment from something before it becomes a problem? Is it 10 seconds, 15, 30? I don't know. I really would love it if they would tell us, but they're never going to tell us that, are they?
Yeah.
And so that's talking about type, and there's more to the Myers-Briggs than just extrovert and introvert, but it builds understanding about our differences in the workplace, in personal relationships. And
does it though? I mean, I've never gone into the workplace, any place that I've worked, and known or asked anybody about their Myers-Briggs score. Is that how you assess an individual, by some test?
And it's all designed to make you realize not everyone is like you and processes the world like you.
Wow. I think I learned that around the age of 7 or something. Are there really grown adults out there that yeah, there are. Never mind.
Yeah.
And once you start living with that every day, the emotional intelligence starts building.
Wow. Then I guess I've had 40 some odd years of emotional intelligence growth compared to whoever our speaker's working with.
When you go into these groups and you're talking to people about cultural competency and
cultural competency. That means using food in math problems that are associated presumably with the audience you have based on their ethnicity and or race. That's what I've learned about cultural competency.
Inclusion and diversity and things like that. And your audience is mostly people of color.
Yeah.
How what are they saying that's different? What is their feedback? How are they receiving things? What is like a common theme of people of color that they like want us to hear and we're not getting?
Okay. Yes. Tell us. Tell us. Oh, tell us true. What do we whites need to learn from people of color?
Yeah. So one of the things is sometimes it's sort of jarring, but I think generally in a positive way to hear a white man talk about his whiteness and his maleness in real.
Okay. Boy, I would love to hear a white man talk about his whiteness and his maleness. Tell me. Sorry, hit the button.
Generally in a positive way to hear a white man talk about his whiteness and his maleness in real terms, and
in real terms,
the ways that my whiteness and my maleness
manifest
show up for me in my life.
Oh, see, I said manifest. I'm using my vocabulary. Okay.
And so
yeah, how does your whiteness show up for you in your life and your maleness?
So first of all, I think that's a little bit jarring. Second of all,
no examples.
There's I was raised by white people.
What? Well, I was raised by cats. I've told this story before. I won't tell it again because I got some time here, but I wonder what that's supposed to tell us. Holy cats, Alan Tyler. Speaking of cats, holy cats. Alan Tyler, thank you so much for the Samurai #1 Dog Cat Fox. Oh, Dog Cat.
Wowie, wow, wow.
There's a Keevernam Dog Cat Fox. Thank you so much, Alan. It's very generous of you as always. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good Sunday so far and are enjoying the show. You were raised by white people. Is that like being raised by wolves?
And it's so interesting because my parents,
if
we had a new neighbor in the neighborhood, and they were like, oh, well, that family just moved in. Oh, and they're black.
Oh, and they're black. Yeah. And now if you said that, right, get this. If you said that, you would know exactly how to treat and approach them because they're black, right? That's what you teach. That's what we're learning here, correct?
And I would say, why are you whispering?
Oh, so shout it from the rooftops.
Similarly, they'd be like, oh, well, the woman who moved in down the street, I think she's G-A-Y. And I'm like, I know how to spell.
And then how do you approach people with that knowledge then, with your current ethos?
It's okay. And so I think that and part of this is from my workshops, but part of this is through other intercultural experiences I've had the privilege to be a part of.
Privilege? I better disrupt that.
Is that white people in my experience.
White people in your experience, are
acculturated for politeness first and realness second.
Politeness first, realness second. So, what he's saying, everyone, is that white people can't be trusted.
And especially when talking about race or sexuality or religion or politics, politeness first.
And tell me true, why should I not then put that same assumption onto you, oh white person?
And that's a function of privilege.
Oh, which you have because you're white, cis, straight, able-bodied. So how can I trust that you have somehow escaped the baser instincts of your nature?
That I can talk about race and make it have to be polite. I've seen many white commentators, especially around MLK Day, talk about how Martin Luther King Jr. would never have been part of the Black Lives Matter protest.
And he wouldn't have. I mean, unless he abandoned all of his rhetoric previously, he wouldn't have. I have a video on this. They tried to make the case somehow that MLK and BLM were on the same page. And I don't know. I'm not going to say it's my best work, although I do like that video quite a bit. I'll try to find the link to it and put it in the description after the show or something if anybody's interested. Or maybe one of my industrious viewers will put it into the chat here in a moment and find it. It's BLM versus MLK or something. Okay. A lot of people say MLK would not be part of the Black Lives Matter movement. You're right. And
I'm like, clearly you have not read the letters from a Birmingham jail.
Clearly you have not read the letters from a Birmingham jail. Okay, so Martin Luther King Jr. was for burning cities down. He was for calling for the deaths of police. He was for race grifting up to the tune of millions, if not billions of dollars in a unconnected, disorganized cell structure of activists, protesters versus just people doing criminal acts but being associated with. And the message that he put out there and the legislation he championed is something that Black Lives Matter protesters respect today. Are you listening to yourself? Of course you're not listening to yourself. Yeah. Show me all those instances where Martin Luther King Jr. burned down buildings and assaulted police officers in his protests. I did a 1-for-1 comparison. Advocatus Diaboli, thank you so much for finding that link. Yes, if you're curious about that video where they tried to make the case that MLK and BLM are on the same page and so on, I did my little bit on that. You can take a look. Let me know what you think about it. But we're okay. I get another couple minutes here, and then I'm going to start wrapping things up. Unless there's some reason to go on. What I do plan to do, though, whether it's an ambush stream or my next TED Excellence, I'm going to take a look at our speaker's TEDx talk, because now I am curious to know what a succinct, focused speech from our speaker on the subject of privilege is.
Clearly, you watched 60 seconds of "I Have a Dream," felt warm and fuzzy about it. Children holding hands or whatever, and just stopped after that. I'm like, King was calling for reparations. King was calling for labor rights. King was calling for a war on poverty.
And what is Black Lives? Okay. Riddle me this, Grandpa Hat. How has Black Lives Matter improved race relations in this country? How has Black Lives Matter demonstrably improved race relations in this country since its founding on or around 2012? Okay. It's been 12 years. Martin Luther King Jr. championed legislation that completely revolutionized this country. And at least in its framing and its words, not necessarily in its execution over the last 50, 60 years, tried to make this country more equal in opportunity and prospect. In the last 12 years, how has Black Lives Matter even approached anything of a fraction of that in this country? Tell me. I'll wait.
And so, the warm and fuzzy one that I see every MLK Day, I'm constantly, I'm like, dear fellow white people, here's a copy of, it's 8 pages, the letters from a Birmingham jail. It'll take you 10 minutes. You want to be a slightly better white person tomorrow than you were today? Don't post a cute meme of MLK with "I Have a Dream." Instead, spend 10 minutes reading these 6 pages. Just
no. I can take the principle of not assessing people on non-determinative factors of their character to heart, and I don't have to go any further. I don't. Because everything that resounds from that principle is better than anything Black Lives Matter has had to say, and anything so far that you've had to say. You want people to assess each other and other people on the basis of their skin color, their gender, their orientation. You came out and you didn't list your credentials. You didn't talk about your accomplishments. You denigrated yourself in saying you're a white, straight, cis, able-bodied male, as though these are elements of your makeup that you have to live down. Because obviously, no matter how much you try, you will always fail, as you told us, right? Because you are inherently flawed. Why are you inherently flawed? Not for anything that you've done, not for any ideas that you have, right? Not for how you treat people or treat yourself. No, because of what you are. You cannot escape that. So I don't need to read Letter from a Birmingham Jail to become a better person, white or otherwise. I have to operate on a principle set that is better than what you are putting out there. Because what you're putting out there is no different than the very mindset that Martin Luther King Jr. championed against. I mean, if you want to see the greatest expression of what Martin Luther King Jr. had to offer, look at the Civil Rights Act. Okay? Look at Title VII, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act when it comes to employment alone. Just employment alone, or participation in scholastic activities from Title VI. That's it. Those lines. Thou shalt not discriminate on the basis of these things in these opportunities in business and jobs in schools, etc. That's it. There's no room to maneuver. It's very simple. And obviously, there's been plenty of people and plenty of instances where they've tried to find ways around it. Ultimately, they die out, like affirmative action. Affirmative action finally went the way of the dodo. And that's how it will proceed out, hopefully, as time goes on. More of these exceptions, more of these loopholes, more of these people trying to reinvigorate a racist, sexist, discriminatory, segregationist mindset as though it was something good will be proven out to be the fools that they are. And you're not doing anybody any favors here. And you're not making a point by saying, I'll read his letter from Birmingham jail. I don't have to. I can take the principle that the man espoused and that was ultimately embedded into our legal system by itself. And if I base my worldview around that, it is so obvious how destructive and regressive this kind of thinking is. But without going on too much more of a tirade, also, thank you, Fostonia. Again, it sounds offensive and condescending to me with this guy uttering MLK's name. Him trying to associate the overall message, intent, and result of Martin Luther King Jr.'s work as being in line with either BLM or his crusade for making better white people. Here's why I know it's stupid. Okay. If he's trying to say Martin Luther King Jr. words from a Birmingham jail are so profound, then they are good for everyone. You don't have to segregate who reads it and who's going to benefit from it. If the words are true because they are true, if they are beneficial because they're beneficial, if they are universal because they're universal, then why segregate who can benefit from it? If people could benefit from it. If he said that, I'd probably have nothing to say. But that's where it all goes sideways for me. Take a minute here. I'm going to stop here. I don't know that I need to do a part 2 on this. I think my part 2 will be his TEDx talk. I think that might be more interesting and less sort of, rolling the dice on what I'm going to hear, and also more focused. But before I sign off completely, let's take a look at what you guys have to say here in the chat. Who did I see? Whose legs just walked in the room? Why, it's Jeanette E. Hellis. This man is seriously saying to be better, you must look at yourself through this weird racial lens. Like this attitude doesn't also make you an asshole. It's so inherently contradictory. It's so he invokes Martin Luther King Jr. and then he divides up who can benefit from his words on the basis of race. He tells who needs to learn something depending on their race, who should be seen as an inherent victim or trauma addict on the basis of their race, or who will never succeed because of their race. Right. This guy is what the square on the bingo card self-vilification or wretchedness was made for. So I'm pretty sure we'll circle that one on his TEDx talk when we get to it. Let's see. Meh. In Dutch, dodos are called walvogels, which means disgusting bird. Oh, you're educating Advocatus Diaboli. Oh, I'm always amazed and humbled in a way, and I don't mean that sarcastically, by the conversations that take place in the chat during my streams with all of my very knowledgeable and eclectic viewers. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Advocatus Diaboli, BLM and MLK have two things in common. Both 3 letters, both have a middle L. It's true. It's true. That's about it. And again, if you get the opportunity, and I'll try to put the link in the description when I have the chance, take a look at my video, just self-promotion. It's an NBC segment trying to associate MLK with Black Lives Matter, and it's something else. It's something else from what I recall. Q Continuum, keeping people in a perpetual state of trauma reduces their ability and initiative to progress further than their current situations. Right. If I'm told that I cannot succeed, or I won't be allowed to succeed, that I'm either an inherent victim or an inherent villain, despite whatever actual goodness I might have in me, well, then I can never break that racial ceiling, right? I'll always be seen as this, or I'll never amount to anything because of that. And not because of who I am, because of what I am. Yeah, it is inherently repressive. It's inherently both self-defeatist and suppressive of other people. That's all it is. Renovitio, BLM have their version of MLK's letter from a Birmingham jail. It's called WhatsApp from a Big Effin' Mitch. Oh man, Patrice Coolers. Man, the most worthy recipient of Black Lives Matter's efforts over the years. Poor her. Let's see. And also from Jeanette E. Hellis, responding to the gentleman Lich, how they scream white privilege and then think black privilege doesn't exist when they accidentally bumped it up. Racial privilege, regardless, is stupid. Right? Racial identitarianism is poison. Doesn't matter who you're talking about. You reduce somebody down to assuming to know something about them on the basis of their skin color. You're not acting in the right way, morally, ethically, or otherwise. And you're not promoting anything that's going to help the world or heal any wounds or anything else. It's just, it so boggles my mind, and has been the seed, the genesis of a lot of what happens on my channel, a lot of things that I cover. It's just that these basic truths that I was taught as a child, right? I've talked about this before. When I was a first grader, like 6 years old, I remember sitting in class with the the big CRT television on that black stand, right? That black metal TV tray that had like the shelf on it that had the VCR, and then on top of that the TV, and they'd have to roll it out, and it had the plugs in the actual stand. You know what I'm talking about? Those of you who are of a certain age. And I remember being shown a video on the civil rights movement, and it was all black and white footage. So when I'm a 6-year-old back in 1987 or whatever, this seems like ancient history, right? I'm looking at black and white stuff. That's, oh my God, that's from the old, that's from ancient times. And I'm seeing all these things about fire hoses and police dogs and protests and all this stuff, and people shouting terrible things at each other on the basis of what one skin color is versus the other, and all this stuff. And I'm just looking at this as a little kid, and I'm just like, what? And I learned then this was how people used to behave because it's bad. That's not how you treat people. That's not nice. Right? That's how my 6-year-old mind worked. They're not being nice to each other. They're being mean to each other. For what? Over what? And at the same time, this is the same kid, me, who is being picked on and bullied by other kids because I wore glasses. And the glasses say what about me? Nothing. Someone's skin color says what about them? Nothing. So if you want to talk about empathy, if you want to talk about lived experience, teaching me something about how to associate with others or see the world, in my 6-year-old little brain, And in my own personal experience, watching something similar happening in ancient history, I thought, that's bad. They're not being nice. They're being mean to people for no good reason. And I carried that with me throughout my entire life. And I just, I thought, I didn't think racism was dead. I thought it was a terrible way to treat people. So every time that I see somebody says, oh yeah, racism because defeated and everything else. No. Because I knew I was still being picked on for my glasses, right? The lessons haven't been learned. It's just that, or the behavior doesn't go away. It's just that you learn whether or not it's good or bad to enact. The Civil Rights Act did not cure racism. The Civil Rights Act was a confession of wrongdoing and a promise to do better in the future. But with the admission that humans are inherently fallible. So you learn not to treat each other that way, even though it might seem like a simple way out, a simple way to see the world. And it is a simple way to see the world. It is a way to see the world in a simple mind. If you don't just think a little bit outside of yourself for a second. You want to talk about empathy. I mean, at the top of this, I thought, well, gosh, he's saying that, my father didn't want me to watch these shows because he didn't want me to feel bad just because I was German by heredity, right? Someone assessing your character on the basis of something that says nothing about you. Your father happened to come from Germany. Therefore, what? You're a villain? You're inherently a Nazi? Okay, well, if you have the empathy enough to say, that's not fair, but then turn around and say, by the way, I'm now going to consult you on how to assess me on the basis of my skin color and someone else on the basis of theirs, it's obvious our speaker has learned nothing. I could go on, but I want to stop, and so I will. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this mostly tirade on my part. I hope you found something worthwhile out of it. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Also, leave a like on the way out if you would. I'd appreciate that. Let's see. What else is going on? Oh, yeah. Tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel. And say that again. Midnight's Edge After Dark will be the newest episode of The Shit List, wherein I, Tom Connors, Toxic Man Flu, Andy Masterson, I think Gary Ambrosia is going to be there, 70s rock fan. We're all going to go over our top 5 list of most romantic movies ahead of Valentine's Day. So if you're looking for a date night movie suggestion, tune in tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Midnight's Edge After Dark for top 5s of romantic movies. I tell you what, I think my list is pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I'm just saying, especially my number 1. I think my number 1's pretty good. I guess you'll have to decide for yourselves tonight. Also, as usual, on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks for enlightenment and entertainment. I call it enlightenment. That actually, never mind. However, I may do an ambush stream earlier than Thursday with our speaker's specific TEDx talk, just as a wrap-up to this, just as a palate cleanser or a continuation of frustration. I don't know, one of the two. So be on the lookout for that. I will definitely post that in Twitter when the time comes. So follow me on Twitter. Sorry, X, at scribe_light. As well, you can also, if you so choose, join the Discord server. Now, I have a Discord server, if you didn't know. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, there's a link to the Discord server in the chat. All you have to do is click on that. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream and have thus earned the right, the entitlement, the privilege of joining the Discord server. And today's secret word is Grandpa Hat. Yes, Grandpa Hat. Just say hello, Grandpa Hat, and I'll know that you watched the show and you can join the Discord. So with that, everyone, thank you again for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It is very, very much appreciated. Everyone, Hope you have a good rest of your Sunday and weekend. Hope you enjoy the Super Bowl. I didn't even mention it. The Super Bowl's coming up. Oh my God, the commercials, the ads, the trailers, they're coming, guys. Hope you enjoy those. Hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.